Hi, welcome back to Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Creighton. And if I didn't say it before, I'll say it again. I hope you had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hopefully, is coming up. We're going to talk about something that's really close to my heart. It's about why the conservatives need to not just stay on message, they need to stay on truth. I'll be back with that in a minute.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Yes, and do like my cat, ring that bell right now. Please ring that bell at the beginning of the broadcast. It's so nice to be with you again right after Christmas. I told you I'd keep reporting the news throughout the Christmas season. I took a couple of days off. I think we all needed to do that. But like my cat says, please ring the bell. Sasha, the cat, always says, ring that bell. and you respond so well. And if you haven't subscribed to this broadcast, to the KRAYDEN'S Right station, please do so now. We're 200 people away from 15,000. Now that is a goal, an objective I didn't really expect we would be close to achieving by the end of 2023. And I'm grateful to all of you out there who watch this broadcast faithfully, and you tell me so, and you always are there with your comments that are building me up, edifying me, telling me you appreciate what I'm doing. I appreciate you saying so. So thanks very much. But what am I talking about today? Well, it's very important because at the end of the year, you usually see the leader of the official opposition doing the official interviews, and he's been absent. And that's just after he did some bang up jobs explaining conservative policy as it is today. Small c conservative policy, which should blend into the party. I'm not here to promote the Conservative Party of Canada. When they say the right things, I support them, I commend them. And I think Pierre Poilievre did an excellent interview with Rex Murphy about a week and a half ago, and I highlighted that on a recent broadcast of Stand on Guard. I think he put it as succinctly as possible. We need a government that is mind your own business. Stop interfering in the lives of Canadians. Stop telling them what kind of moral positions they should have. Stop telling parents how they should raise their children. It rang bells across the country. It struck a note. It hit a chord. So why is Melissa Lantsman, the deputy leader of the party, out there doing interviews for him right now? I hope it's not for this reason, because the backroom people in the Conservative Party, whom I know, no, I don't work with them anymore, but I have in the past. I know who they are, and I know philosophically and ideologically where they come from. And they don't like conservatives rocking the boat. They want conservative leaders to constantly edge towards the center and sound like liberals. That's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for electoral defeat. So I encourage Pierre Poilievre to continue, not to just stay on message. Don't you hate that term? All that means is keep reading the script, keep reading the talking points. Justin Trudeau does that very well, doesn't he? And so do all the other front bench members of the Liberal caucus and cabinet. They all read talking points very well. They stay on message. It might be a garbled message. It might be a catastrophic message for Canada. It might be poisonous and toxic, but they stay on message. It's more important to stay on truth. And that's what Pierre Poilievre has to do. I was very disturbed to see this interview, this CTV interview, which Pierre Poilievre could have done much better at. But here's Melissa Lantsman, the deputy leader of the party, and I don't know what the hell she's doing in that position, because here's a Doug Ford staffer who suddenly is catapulted into the House of Commons, suddenly the deputy leader of the party, and exhibits in this interview how shallow her understanding of policy is. Let's have a listen.
See an agreement that provides more munitions for Ukraine. We would like to see an agreement without this provision. This is the first time again that the Liberals have put this in a trade deal, and we want to signal to all Canadians that this will not be included in trade deals.
And let me then ask you more specifically, putting that free trade deal aside for a moment, about the Conservative Party's stance on Ukraine, because I mentioned how the Liberals have characterized your vote on this as a lack of support for the level of aid that Canada has provided. Would a Conservative government endorse the amount of aid, build on the amount of aid, support Ukraine in the way that the government is now, or even amplify it? Or are you going to do what the Liberals say, which is kind of hearken to the far-right politics we're seeing in the U.S. right now, which is very hesitant to keep supporting Ukraine?
Look, I think that's a nonsense claim. Look, I think that we have supported Ukraine from the beginning. We will support Ukraine until the end, until Putin is no longer illegally invading the country.
And do you believe that there is sort of an existential threat posed by Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and that if he is successful there, he won't stop
there? I believe
there?
there's a lot more that Canada can do, including the exports of LNG, to make sure that Putin isn't funding his war with dictator oil money that is killing Ukrainians. We're not going to impose a carbon tax, and we're going to make sure that it's Canadian LNG that's exported to Europe to get their dependence off of Putin's war money.
And I take that point, but do you believe
that's more that we can do, though?
No, I get it. I'm just saying, I'm trying to understand the Conservatives' position on Ukraine against the backdrop of how the Liberals are framing it right now. You have an opportunity to clarify for Canadians. Do you believe that Putin will stop in Ukraine, or that there's a bigger threat if he's successful there?
Well, I think there's threats all over the world. There's threats in China, in Iran, in Ukraine. There's threats to Western democracies all over the world. And Canada has a lot of natural resources to provide in the provision of, or to provide to those fights. And we're not doing everything that we can be doing. We have a different tack to take, but it's not going to start with a free trade agreement that includes the promotion of a carbon tax, and we're going to stand strong on that.
If you'd amplify exports of LNG,
Absolutely.
Would you maintain the level of military aid, more than $2.5 billion?
Would you keep funding we actually voted to increase the support on munition, to give Ukrainians the weapons that they need, and not the promotion of a carbon tax that we don't want.
So you wouldn't hold back any of that military funding, to be clear?
Well, I think we would expand that military funding, and in fact, it's the Liberals that voted.
Okay, there you have it. They would expand that funding. We have given Ukraine billions, and it's a black hole of Kiev. That's all it is. It's not going to rescue Ukraine. A lot of this money has been so-called humanitarian assistance, and it's been taken by the oligarchs and the corrupt politicians that run Ukraine. And we've given Ukraine so much of our own material, we don't have anything left. All of our Leopard tanks, virtually all of our Leopard tanks, are blacked out wreckages on the battlefield in Ukraine. Trudeau gave them all away. So what is she saying? What is Lantsman saying here? Conservative Party would do exactly like the Liberals. We would do exactly like Trudeau, keep giving billions into the black hole of Kiev, keep giving billions so that this clown, Volodymyr Zelensky, can continue to play the role of a Ukrainian president. He is a corrupt dictatorial leader running a corrupt tyranny. It's not a democratic country. Ukraine is not a democracy. This war is not about democracy. It did not begin when Russia invaded Ukraine. It began in 2014 when Ukraine started shelling the Russian minority in the eastern provinces of Donbass. So her understanding of this issue, and especially the journalist who's asking the questions, is very, very limited. And to suggest that the narrative now, the gospel of this war, is that if Putin wins in Ukraine, he's going to step into Poland, and therefore, and then, it's utter nonsense. He has a squabble with Ukraine because Ukraine cannot be a member of NATO and coexist as a neighbor of Russia that close. Now, that is a geopolitical reality, and it's one the United States and NATO recognized decades ago. But they've somehow forgotten it recently. As the club of NATO keeps increasing and increasing, and as it does, the risk of nuclear war escalates as well. So here's Lantsman talking nonsense. Now, she's not really going to say, yes, we believe Putin is going to march into Poland, because hopefully there's somebody in the Conservative Party leadership that's astute enough, smart enough to realize the war is over. Ukraine's lost the war. And if we keep giving billions of dollars to Ukraine, it's going to be money lost. And it's going to be money that is going to be confiscated by corrupt politicians and oligarchs. And that is the important thing to remember here. The Conservative Party should be taking a stand on truth and not staying on the liberal message that we need to stand by Ukraine until the end of time, for as long as it takes. Because the reality is the war is over, Zelensky's corrupt, the Ukrainian government's corrupt, and this war could have been over a year and a half ago. And the longer the war went on, the more Ukrainians died. And she's not even acknowledging the carnage of the millions, potentially, of Ukrainians who have died in this war. The population has declined by about at least a fifth, maybe a quarter, since the war started. It's been a devastating war for everybody. It's been a catastrophe. The war needs to end, not just because it potentially can prompt a nuclear confrontation between the United States/NATO and Russia, but because it's killing people at an alarming rate. And the only people who are benefiting from this war are the munitions people, the armaments manufacturers who love this war. So the Conservative Party should be standing for some truth on this and saying, let's stop the war in Ukraine. Let's stop giving billions to Zelensky. Let's stop putting money into a bottomless pit. And we're never going to see it. And it's never going to work for the ends that we're pretending it's working towards. So why did they put Lantsman on the show to talk about how much the Conservatives are supporting Ukraine and how they want to spend more money, more of your money, when our defense, it's our national defense, is in serious financial problems, is seriously underfunded in the things that actually matter in terms of capital acquisition projects and munitions? Why is the Conservative Party promising to spend more on Ukraine? Well, it might have something to do, God forbid, with his news conference here.
If you actually stop and listen, as we did, we listened to the 45-minute-long interviews, you actually end up hearing nothing. And, we find that concerning. We think that Canadians would find that concerning when they take the time to actually listen and hear that nothing is being said.
You're promoting these interviews?
You said, has something changed? Yes, something's changed. Look at the Conservative Party of Canada. This is a party that used to support Ukraine. It's now a party that won't even vote in favor of a free trade agreement with Ukraine, won't vote to support elements of Operation Unifier that directly supports Ukraine. Has something changed? Absolutely. The Conservative Party of Canada has changed. It's changed dramatically just in the actions that we've seen in the last 4 months to make sure that Canadians are informed, to make sure that they have all of this information, because it's absolutely critical. It's about a new Conservative Party of Canada. It's about a Conservative Party of Canada that is more based like the MAGA alt-right Republicans that we see in the United States, like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. That seems to be who they're heavily influenced by now.
Canadians are supporting.
Pardon me?
Then you're saying that's who Canadians are supporting?
No, what I'm saying is that Mr. Poilievre is trying to give you the impression that he's something that, quite frankly, he's not. Because when you actually listen to what they say in the House, when you see how they actually vote, you start to realize that, they are not the Conservative Party of Brian Mulroney. Brian Mulroney's Conservative Party dealt with acid rain. They dealt with fixing the ozone layer. Literally led the world. Literally led the world in that. They literally led the world in that regard. And now
All right, try to get it out, Mark. That's Mark Garrettson, one of the most vacuous members of Parliament for the Liberal Party, trying to talk about acid rain and how the Conservative Party was just wonderful under Brian Mulroney. But his point here, of course, is that the Conservative Party really doesn't support Ukraine like the Liberal Party. We just love this war. We want this war to continue forever, or as long as it takes, because a lot of people who make armaments are making a lot of money off of this. So let's pretend the war is all about democracy and freedom. Now, the thing is, this news conference was a joke. It was a farce. The reporters who were there said, "What are we here for? To hear you guys spout out about the fact Pierre Poilievre shouldn't be doing interviews?" They didn't fall for this. Is the Conservative Party falling for this? I hope not. God forbid that they should think this is a serious threat because a guy like Mark Garrettson stands up and suggests the Conservatives are not pro-Ukraine or sufficiently pro-Ukraine. This is a bad joke. And the Conservatives should have treated it that way. Poilievre won by doing that interview. Poilievre won by talking truth about things and just sounding like a politician who actually has some basic common sense. Garrettson and these others don't have common sense. They go on about, just like the MAGA Republicans, just mouthing talking points that are meaningless and so tired. You notice the CTV host said the same thing. Isn't this like the Conservatives are advocating far-right MAGA policies? In the first place, the MAGA policies are not far-right. They're common sense policies suggesting the Americans have given way too much already to the war in Ukraine. It's time to end the war, and it's time to end the funding of a corrupt regime and a corrupt clown of a leader named Zelensky. That's what the MAGA argument is in the States. In Canada, the Conservative Party should be saying, as far as Canadians are concerned, it's time to end this war. It's time to stop giving our military resources to Ukraine, where they are destroyed on the battlefield. It's time to stop giving billions of dollars to Ukraine because we cannot afford to fund our own military. So that should be the point. Now, I hope the Conservative Party communications people are not that stupid or that in bed with liberal talking points that they can't see this. Because this news conference was a farcical exercise in so-called rebuttal, if you will. I don't know what else to call it. Because they tried their best, but all they did was look very stupid. And it was much ado about nothing. And even the mainstream media who were there, and they are the only ones allowed to be there, could see how stupid this experience was. So I'm saying, Conservatives, you need not just talk on message. You need to speak on the truth. You need to stand for things that are real, substantial, and truthful. So don't just keep on message, keep on truth. Don't just stay on message, stay on the truth. And that's important. You did very well in these end of the year interviews that you did, Pierre Poilievre. You need to do more of that material. Stop putting people on CTV representing the Conservative Party who really don't know what they're talking about. And remember, Melissa Lantsman is the same MP who earlier this year advocated universal basic income. That's communism. That's Marxism. And she suggested the Conservative Party should be way out front on this issue. Well, they should be way behind it and saying it's bad. It would result in an economic catastrophe for Canada. $2,000 a month for doing nothing. And if it's universal, it's going to run into trillions of dollars. Trillions of dollars that we don't have. And it's going to mean that $2,000 is suddenly going to be worth like $200 because of the impact it's going to have on the inflationary cycle. $2,000 won't be worth much anymore if everybody's getting $2,000 a month. And Lantsman has supported that insane proposal in the past. So the Conservatives need to think twice about who they put in front of the camera representing the party, because this person doesn't think about policy very clearly at times. And I want to make that point. And I don't care if I've offended Conservatives with this. You need to be consistent in your ideology and consistently defending things that are truthful. Anyway, I've got another broadcast to put out tomorrow. It's going to be the end of the year broadcast. It's going to be very, very exciting. And I think you'll like the people I have on and the ideas that we're going to discuss, because we are on the precipice of potential catastrophe, but we're also on the cusp of potential renewal. Canadians can still take back this country if we resolve to resist. Thank you for being with me today. Once again, Merry Christmas. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't done so, do so. I appreciate it so much. And I will be back with you very shortly.